An 18-year-old girl unwraps a wedding gift from her fiancé. It's his personal diary. And on those pages, in vivid detail, he describes sleeping with the servant girls on his estate. He makes her read it before the wedding. So, there are no secrets between us. She reads it. She marries him anyway. She gives birth to 13 children and buries 7 of them. She handwrites his 1,000-page novel, War and Peace, 7 times over. And for the next half-century, she slowly disappears under the cold contempt of a man the entire world worshipped. When she finally runs to drown herself in a pond, they pull her out, not out of compassion, but so her husband's devoted followers could say, "You see? Look at this hysterical woman, our poor saint. Well, how does he bear it?" That saint was Leo Tolstoy. The world called him a prophet of love. Nobody looked behind the closed door. Why didn't she just leave? We ask that question a lot, and it sounds so simple when you say it out loud. But here's the thing. When someone is objectively good by the world's standards, respected, charming at dinner parties, never raises his voice in public, never breaks anything, it becomes almost impossible to say, "He is destroying me," just quietly, where no one can see. Because the world only sees the pretty picture, and when you try to show them what's underneath, they don't want to look. Not because they're cruel, because it's convenient not to. This dynamic shows up everywhere. There's an imbalance of power in marriages, in offices, in politics. Because if the person everyone admires turns out to be a tyrant behind closed doors, the whole story falls apart. And people will do almost anything to protect a story they're comfortable with, even if that means siding with the person causing the harm. We tend to think of abuse as something straightforward. A line drawn in the sand between 2 people, the one who throws the punch and the one who takes it, the villain and the victim. But psychological violence doesn't look like a movie. It looks like a slow, meticulous rewriting of reality. And here is the terrifying truth about how it actually works. It requires an audience. The moment you become inconvenient, the moment you start telling an uncomfortable truth, strangers become part of the machinery. Friends, family, colleagues. They don't just stay quiet, they actively participate in dismantling your credibility. Psychologists call this reactive abuse, but that's a clinical term for a deeply agonizing human experience. Here's what it looks like in practice. Imagine a person who knows exactly which buttons to push. They quietly, systematically poke at you in private. They undermine your sanity. They mock your pain. They slowly turn the dial of your anxiety up to 100, and they do it with a calm, neutral expression on their face. Eventually you break, you snap, you raise your voice, you cry. You throw a plate at the wall. You try to run out the door. And right at that exact moment, the audience is invited in to watch. The abuser steps back, points at you and says, "Look at her." Tolstoy's followers were glad when Sofia tried to drown herself, because it proved them right. It validated the narrative they had already decided to believe. They needed her to look crazy, so his cruelty could look like patience. Every time a person in pain reacts, every single tear, every desperate plea, every public breakdown, that reaction is harvested. It gets packaged and used as evidence against them. See, we told you she's unstable. Look how calm he is, and look how she's screaming. She's losing her mind. The violence that caused the reaction stays completely invisible. It was hidden in whispers, in closed-door conversations, in subtle dismissals. All the world sees is the aftermath. All anyone sees is the hysterical woman. The abuser gets to play the victim, and the real victim? They are placed in a prison built not by the person who hurt them, but by the society that watched them break. Washington, 1972. Martha Mitchell, wife of the U.S. Attorney General, right hand of President Nixon, sharp, loud, beloved by the press. She finds out about Watergate before the journalists do. She knows what her husband and Nixon have done. She wants to tell the truth. She picks up the phone. Her bodyguard rips the cord out of the wall. They lock her in a hotel room. A doctor walks in with Buck, a stranger, and injects her with a tranquilizer against her will. The next morning, the papers run the story. Attorney General's wife has nervous breakdown, paranoia. She's seeing conspiracies. Poor, poor husband. Nobody tried to listen to her. The whole country exhaled and accepted the diagnosis. Watergate broke 2 years later. Martha was right about everything. Psychiatry eventually named something after her, the Martha Mitchell effect. It's when a psychiatrist mistakes a patient's accurate account of reality for a symptom of mental illness. When the truth is so inconvenient, it gets treated as a disease. They called it madness. It was just the truth. What happened to Martha Mitchell and Sofia Tolstaya wasn't some dark, isolated chapter of history. It wasn't just a product of the 19th century or the turbulent 1970s. It's a psychological blueprint, and it is running right now in your city, in your workplace, maybe even in your social circle. When someone tells the truth about a person the world has decided to admire, they don't just face the wrath of that one person, they face the collective anger of everyone whose comfortable version of reality just got threatened. Think about it. If the beloved CEO is actually a monster, if the charming husband is a tyrant, if the great prophet of love is a domestic abuser, what does that say about us? What does that say about our ability to judge character? It creates a massive cognitive dissonance. It shatters the just world fallacy, the deeply held belief that bad things only happen to bad people and good people are easy to spot. To avoid the pain of that shattered reality, society instinctively protects the powerful. We launch smear campaigns without even realizing we're doing it. We use the language of empathy to completely silence the victim. You're exaggerating. That doesn't sound like him. He's always been perfectly fine with me. Why are you bringing this up now? Are you just trying to ruin his life? Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you need help. These aren't just words. They are weapons, and they are wielded by well-meaning people. Just like the bodyguard in Martha's hotel room who thought he was just handling a situation. Just like the disciples in Tolstoy's house who thought they were protecting a genius. The problem was never just the person causing the harm. One person, no matter how powerful, can only do so much damage on their own. One person cannot silence a truth. The problem was the thousands, the millions of ordinary people around them who simply found it easier not to believe. The colleagues who looked the other way, the friends who stopped calling, the journalists who printed the PR statement without asking questions. It is the silence of the crowd that turns ordinary abuse into an absolute tragedy. After Tolstoy died, Sofia lived 9 more years. She didn't fade away. She wrote her own memoirs. She stubbornly organized his entire massive archive, preserving the very legacy of the man who tried to erase her. She worked relentlessly until her last days, making sure history would at least have a chance to see the full picture. After Watergate, Martha Mitchell became a symbol. Journalists who had called her crazy issued public apologies. Senators called her a hero. She was vindicated on a national stage. Both of these women lived long enough to see the truth come out. They lived long enough to see the world finally turn around and say, "Oh, you weren't crazy, you were right." But that vindication didn't give Sophia her sanity back. It didn't give Martha her family back. The apologies always come too late. And here is the most chilling part. We only know their stories today because one of them happened to be married to a literary god, and the other was tied to the biggest political scandal in American history. They had a stage. Their pain was loud enough to eventually echo through time. But for every Sophia, for every Martha, there are millions of people who never got their vindication. People who lived their entire lives being labelled the unstable one, the problem, the crazy ex, the difficult employee. People who died while the world continued to applaud the very people who broke them in the dark. This dynamic relies on our laziness. It relies on our tendency to look at a messy situation and just side with the person who seems the most calm. So the next time you see someone losing their mind, the next time you see the hysterical woman or the employee having a breakdown or the friend acting completely out of character, before you judge them, before you agree with the calm, collected person standing next to them, ask yourself what you're not seeing. Ask yourself who benefits from their madness. Because right now, in someone's journal that no one will ever read, in a kitchen with the blinds pulled down, in an office after hours, and someone's truth is waiting for its Watergate. And before a truth can be revealed, someone has to be willing to believe it.